Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back. Today I'll be ranking Breath of Fire, Growlanser, and Valkyrie Profile. Why? Because they're such small series and they don't merit their own videos. Anyway, I won't be ranking the Japan-only titles, unfortunately only the ones that got a North American release, except for one, but we'll get to that later. And with that out of the way, let's begin! We're gonna start with Breath of Fire! And the first one is the release on the Super Nintendo. That's the version I played and finished. Yes, I did play the Game Boy Advance version, but I only played it for a few hours, and I gotta say, it does feel better than the Super Nintendo version, but overall, it's the same game. I know it was a rough start, but back then, in the early 90s, it was a huge deal. Another RPG, another major RPG from a major company, and when I first played this game, I really enjoyed it, despite the huge encounter rate and the generic story and the generic everything. But you gotta understand, back then it was a great game, a new take on the genre, and come on, a Capcom role-playing game. So nowadays I understand it's kind of rough to play, but I have fond memories of this game. It's a B tier for me. Now the sequel on the Super Nintendo, I think the Game Boy Advance version is also better, slightly better, but either way, the Super Nintendo version is the one I played first. Now, this is a game that I've been trashing for many years. The first time I played it many years ago, I hated the game, and I stayed away from it until I played the Game Boy Advance version that I also kinda hated. Well, I didn't hate it, I just disliked it now. And I never really gave it a chance until recently, until like 3 or 4 months ago when I streamed the game, and I was like, you know what? I was wrong. I think this is a great game too. Probably in some areas, it is a much better game than the first Breath of Fire. I want to say in almost every single area, except one thing. The encounter rate is atrocious, no matter the version you play in. So, just because of that, the first Breath of Fire is better, but in everything else, this is a much better game. However, it's still a B tier for me. Breath of Fire 2, a couple of years ago, maybe 1 year ago, would have been a D tier, maybe E, but nowadays, I respect the game, I like it, a B tier for me. Breath of Fire 3 is a personal favorite to a lot of people. Some go on to claim it is the best in the series. That's okay, because it is a very good game, as a matter of fact. Like, it did everything from the first 2 Breath of Fire games. It did it so much better. Like, it understood all of the flaws of the first games and fixed them all. However, I don't think it's a masterpiece. I think it's a game that has a couple of problems. Both versions, both the PSP and the PlayStation 1 version. Which one is the best? I think you can't go wrong with either version. I'm gonna go ahead and recommend the PSP version, but honestly, both versions are just as great. So, Breath of Fire 3, I love the game. I think it's a great game, and it does stand out way more than the first 2 games, so I'm gonna give this an A tier just for this occasion, because I've previously ranked this game on a B tier in previous videos, but because now it's the Breath of Fire highlight, A tier for me. Now, Breath of Fire 4 is almost a masterpiece, but I gotta be honest with you, even though it's my favorite in the series, the difference between my love for Breath of Fire 4 and 3 is almost the same. I like 4 slightly better because I've never finished Breath of Fire 3, and Breath of Fire 4 I did finish the game, and I really enjoyed it. I really like how you play with both protagonists, the protagonist and the antagonist, and you go mission by mission, back and forth. So that's something that back then many RPGs just didn't have. That was something kind of new, and I really enjoy that. So Breath of Fire 4 is another A tier for me, almost a tie with Breath of Fire 3. Honestly, both games are equally amazing. You can't go wrong with either game. Breath of Fire 5, also known as Breath of Fire Dragon Quarter on the PlayStation 2. You know, I think I've been very rough with this game in the past. I've been very negative towards it. I don't like this game one bit. I tried 2 times, and it's not that the game didn't click with me, because it did. I mean, story-wise and the music was pretty darn good, but it's just the gameplay mechanics completely ruined my experience. This is one of those love it or hate it RPGs. It was a very rough and extremely bizarre experiment by Capcom, and they almost killed the series. This was a commercial failure in North America. and I think it was successful in Japan, where over time even people there began criticizing the game. I'm not gonna rank it at E because I don't think it's a terrible game, but it's just a game with huge major problems. Breath of Fire 6 is a horrible piece of trash and it killed the series. It's an A tier for me. It's only in Japan, thankfully! It's an only in Japan game! One of the very first times I am so happy a game didn't get localized. Wow, thank you Japan for not even bothering to bring this horrible abomination to the West. Alright, moving on to Growlanser. Growlanser, one of my absolute favorite JRPG series of all time. There's 6 games in the series, but the first one and the 6th one stayed in Japan. Okay, I understand the 6th one because Growlanser 5, which is my favorite, didn't do very well in sales. In fact, none of them did very well in sales. All 4 of them were kind of commercial failures, but the first one got a release on the PlayStation and then on the PSP, and neither version was localized. There's been some fan-translated attempts in the past, and I think the story is translated but in a form of a script. So you gotta read and then play the game and read and play, and I don't want to do that. So I'm only gonna rank Growlanser 2, 3, 4, and 5. Growlanser 2 and 3 come in this package called Growlanser Generations on the PlayStation 2, but they're 2 completely different games, so I'm gonna rank them separately. Growlanser 2, The Sense of Justice, is a very short game. It's extremely hard and extremely unbalanced, but I love it either way. It's just the idea of having this real-time battle system with strategy elements. It's just, back when I first played all of these games, there was nothing like them. Sure, there were some similarities with games like, I don't know, Ogre Battle or maybe StarCraft, but hell, they're hard to compare because they're so unique, and the battle system in these games are so original that they're hard to compare with other RPGs. And Growlancer Sense of Justice has a very good story, a cool cast of characters. Sure, it has some sexualization and some cliches by the book, but other than that, it's a great game. It's just the 2 major problems are the unbalanced difficulty and the fact that it's a very short game. I mean, you can beat this game in less than 20 hours. I wish this game could have been longer. So just because of that, Growlancer The Sense of Justice, while still a great game, it's still a B tier for me. Now, the third game, the prequel to them all. Story-wise, it is the prequel. It takes like 1,000 years before the first Growlancer, and it's a better game. The only problem with this game is that the party was now reduced to only 4 characters per battle, and it stayed that way on every single entry. Like, I really like how in Growlancer The Sense of Justice you had a party up to 8 characters, 7 or 8 characters, and I really like that. But okay, I'll settle down with 4 characters, and honestly, it's not like it bothered me that much because it's still a great game, much better than the first Growlancer, better story, better cast of characters, better development, better battle mechanics, better overall, better everything. So it's like an improved version of the first, of Growlancer 2. A very dark game, probably the darkest in the series, as a matter of fact. I strongly recommend this game, man, so I'm gonna put it on the A tier. Now, Growlancer 4, the infamous Growlancer 4. I say infamous because, well, the Growlancer series are very hard RPGs. And if there's one game that totally made me rage quit a hell of a lot of times, is this one. This is by far the hardest in the series. Nothing compares to it, and it's probably one of the hardest role-playing games I ever played in my life of all consoles. Still a great story with great character development, lots of routes. This game had way more routes and endings, like way more than its predecessors. That's why I love this game so much, and I did get a couple of routes. I've beaten this game like 2 or 3 times with different routes each time, and I really enjoy this game. Like, it's far superior to Growlancer 2, The Sense of Justice. However, brutally unbalanced. Some missions that are just downright impossible. To date, I have no idea how I managed to beat this game, because the second time you play it, you get these rings that make your characters overpowered, so you're okay from now on. But the first time you play this game with the normal difficulty, man, you're in for one hell of a ride. A tier, almost a masterpiece, but god damn it, it's just so frustrating sometimes. Growlancer 5, Heritage of War, is my personal favorite RPG in the series. Probably one of my top 3 favorite RPGs on the PlayStation 2. and hell, probably one of my top 5 favorite RPGs of all time. You guys know I'm a huge fan of it, I've covered this game a million times already, no more reason to keep talking about it. You guys know everything there is to know about this game, probably thanks to me. A masterpiece, man. Next year for me. Last but not least, Valkyrie Profile. Such a great and iconic series that's nowadays kinda dead. Except for that stupid ass mobile game called Valkyrie Anatomia that I'm not gonna cover because I couldn't care less about mobile games. Instead, we're gonna start with the Valkyrie Profile on the PlayStation, also ported to the PSP. Both versions are almost identical gameplay wise. Sure, the PSP version has these CGI cool cinematics, which are, well, really cool. But other than that, I played both versions and they play almost exactly the same. However, the one I finished like 3 times is the original PlayStation 1 version, very expensive and hard to find nowadays. I know that, but you know, emulation, or there's a PSP version, which is fairly cheap and affordable. A masterpiece, a game that I don't need to cover anymore here. Such an important game, great music, story, graphics, one of the best stories ever written in a role-playing game, dare I say, and for the PlayStation era, that was saying much. That was saying a lot because you know the PlayStation RPGs, right? Most of them had amazing stories. Valkyrie Profile stands out even among all of those monsters. Straight S for me, that is a masterpiece in my opinion. And Valkyrie Profile 2 Silmeria, the sequel slash prequel slash whatever, is my favorite. It's my favorite RPG on the PlayStation 2. And probably my second favorite RPG of all time. So, wow. What can I say about this game that I haven't already said? I know the battle system was different this time because it involved like moving around and traversing these areas, carefully avoiding the enemies and sometimes going straight to the bosses or to the enemy leaders. And that was just a lot of fun. And I've told this story before, but the first time I played this game, I couldn't get into it, I ditched it, and I hated it, but then I gave it a second chance several months later, and I fell in love with it. This is one of the very few games that I've played in my life where I've done absolutely everything. All my characters level 99, well, most of them. I beat the Seraphic Gate, which is like the secret post-game dungeon, extremely hard. I beat that dungeon twice, I unlocked a hell of a lot of skills, did all the side quests, did everything. And while it didn't break my heart like Chrono Cross did, it also broke me to tears. This game made me cry. It's a very emotional journey, and I love this game almost as the same personal level as Chrono Cross, as a matter of fact. It's very important to me. Another masterpiece, S tier, of course. And last but not least, because I'm not covering the bullshit on the mobile devices, Valkyrie Profile Covenant of the Plume, a game that I have a very strong love-hate relationship with it. While I think it's still a great game, I think it's also a terrible game. So it doesn't make any sense, right? I can't decide. You know, I play this game and during some areas, during some maps, I'm loving it. I'm like, wow, I really like this game. And then I go to the next area and I want to trash. I want to grab the Nintendo DS or the 3DS and... I hate this game, man. It's so unbalanced. It's one of the most convoluted pieces of... I don't even know what to say about this game anymore. Story is great. Story is great. It's untouchable, undeniably good. Music is also fantastic. It does stand out. It has a couple of themes that are pretty catchy and pretty memorable. Characters are great. It's such a dark story. It's far darker than the previous 2 Valkyrie Profile games. It also has several routes, and depending on the route, each route is harder than the other one, but it's hard to tell which route it's like the easiest to get into, so you can play that route and then start on your next playthrough with the other route. The problem with this game is that you have to sacrifice one of your allies to move on to the next chapter. Unless you do that, you can't move on, or you can't even beat a certain boss battle. You gotta do that, you gotta kill your allies. The allies you've been training for so long. And at the beginning it's like, okay, I don't care about this guy, let's sacrifice this guy. But then you start running out of characters because there aren't many characters in this game, not even 10 I believe per route. So you get to a point where it's like you're stuck with the 4 characters and you gotta grind them all and maybe 3 characters. It's just brutally unbalanced, man. Brutally unbalanced. Okay, enough about that rant. I give it a C. It's probably a B tier for a lot of people. Sometimes it's a B for me, sometimes it's a D, so I settled down for C. And that's the end of my video. Sorry this rant took so long, but I just had to once again let out my frustrations on this game. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, share this video with your friends, and I'll see you on the next ranking.